Work sets allow multiple people to work on a Revit project at the same time. In this instance, work sets are currently not turned on, but I'd really like multiple people to have the chance to work on this project with me. So to do this, I'm going to come down here to the bottom of the screen and click on this blue and green icon along with this little white wrench looking icon. This is the work sharing icon. And when we do this, it'll bring up the work sharing dialog that's going to give us a little bit of a warning saying that it needs to now place everything that's a level, which are the different elevations in Revit, or a grid, such as these structural grids we can see in our floor plan view, onto one of the work sets. And it's going to move everything else that's not a level or a structural grid to a different work set. At this point, we could rename these work sets to something else, maybe something made a little bit more sense for our processes. But honestly, I kind of like their naming scheme, so we're just going to click on OK to this. Silently in the background, Revit is looking at every object and it's reassigning it a new work set, meaning that if it's a grid or a level, it's going on one of the work sets. If it's anything else, it's going to the other work set. And by being on these work sets, it means we can now control who can make changes to those entities. For instance, right now it says that shared levels and grids, yes, are editable by the owner. In this case, the owner is me. Now, the same thing is going on with work set 1. Yes, it's editable by the owner. On your own computer, if you've been following along, you probably have your name or the name that you log into your computer as being the owner. One of the settings in Revit is that by default, it'll try to name whoever it is that's logging into the computer, that name as being the owner of those objects. Now there is a spot underneath the big R in options where you can change that owner's name to be someone else's name. Right now though, it has my name and everything in the project is on one of these work sets. But really I'd like to have more than just me being able to make modifications to it. What I need to do is change these yeses to be nos. So no, it's not only editable by the owner. It's editable by somebody else. Unfortunately though, until we save, it won't allow us to do that. In fact, I'll show it to you right now. If I change this from being a yes to a no, it says that you need to synchronize it to central first before you can change this information. So I'm just going to click on close to this, and in just a moment I will be saving this information. But before I do that, I think I'm going to create a few more work sets. For what it's worth, if you have 1 or 2 people working on a project at one time, you really only need to have these 2 work sets available to you. In fact, most people say that if you only have 3 people working on a project, 2 work sets is usually pretty good. Once you get up to 5 people or more working in a project environment, you almost certainly need to set up multiple work sets. And what this means is that multiple people can be working in a project without running into each other as often. They can start drawing their kinds of entities on their own work sets without having to worry about accidentally selecting someone else's work set information or having to ask to borrow certain things inside of the Revit model to continue to make their changes. If you do need to set up work sets, you come over here and select on the word New. And usually you'll have work sets such as Mechanical. Maybe another work set would be called Structural. Also, work sets allow us to control visibility of things. So if I'm drawing something on work set 1, and then I didn't want to see the mechanical or structural, I could turn off the visibility of either mechanical or structural when I'm drawing inside of my own floor plans. And I can do that either through the visibility graphics or through some different other settings. I want to make sure that anybody can make modifications to any of this information. So to do this, I need to click on OK and then save to make a central file. So the next thing to do would be to come up to the big R, do a save as, and then save this project as something. And in this case, what I'd like to do is create a file which is going to be considered the central model. Through here where we have our file name, we're going to call this central model and then select on save. Now usually your central file or your central model should be placed on a network location so that everybody has access to it so that they can make modifications and save back to the central file. Because this is the main storage area of all the information that's getting drawn on each person's Revit project. Now we're going to click on Save to this, and we'll notice that this becomes Central Model up here after the save is completed. Now the next thing I like to do is finish off this process of setting up the central model by coming down, clicking on the Work Sets button again, and then changing this from being editable to being no. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not editable. It just means that not only the owner can edit it. There can be multiple people now that can borrow those objects, which means many people can be working on the mechanical systems or the structural or whatever's on Work Set 1. The only thing that they won't be able to do is work on the exact same item at the same time, such as work on the exact same wall or the exact same door at the same time. So work sets allow us to split our model up, enable certain people to be able to work on certain parts of the model, and other people to work on other parts of the model. It can also control the graphics, the display representation on whether or not it's visible in all views or it's not visible in all views. And that can be specified either through here or through the visibility graphics of each of these individual views.